Thank you very, very much, Ms. Moratti. Unfortunately, Ms. Moratti cannot stay with us for the whole session, but we appreciate very much the time you took so far. Now we come to panel number 1, and I would like to introduce the moderator of this panel to you, Karolina from ESWET. I mentioned it already. And I must admit, I was really hoping to have a member state representative on the panel for the first panel, but nobody dared to come. But I know that there are several representatives from member states here, and maybe you will speak up later when the audience will be also actively encouraged to participate. Now I'm happy to leave the floor to Karolina.
Thank you very much, MEP Moratti. Thank you very much, Ella, for the introduction and setting the scene for all of us. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first panel of today's event. My name is Karolina on behalf of ESWET, and it is my real pleasure to moderate this discussion today on what is arguably one of the most complicated policy topics that the waste sector is facing currently. Is the EU emissions trading system the right tool to drive decarbonisation in the waste sector? As we know, the EU is advancing on multiple fronts, on climate neutrality, circular economy, and energy resilience. At the same time, the possible inclusion of waste to energy and broadly the waste sector in the ETS raises a number of important questions. So this is not just a theoretical debate. It's about how climate policies can interact with real environmental consequences and real waste management systems, which are highly local, highly regulated, and they are also closely linked to public service obligations, as Ella mentioned in her introduction. So today we want to look at this topic from different angles, the policy perspective, the operational reality, but also the system-wide implications. And importantly, we want to explore not only if the ETS works or doesn't work, but also how it could work, would work in practice, and what risks or unintended consequences we need to be aware of. Before we start, let me briefly introduce our excellent panel. And we are joined today by Mette Quinn, Deputy Director at DG CLIMA. Welcome, Unit B1, European Commission. Welcome, Mette. And I'd like to invite you to take the floor one by one, and I'll later give you the floor. Then we are joined by Donatas Petronis, Managing Director at Green Klaipėda from Lithuania. Welcome, Donatas. Amalia Cerda, Sustainability Director at TIRME from Spain. Welcome, Amalia. And lastly, Paul de Breuker, Chairman of the Board of Indaver and President of CEWEP as well, Belgium. So welcome to all of you and thank you for being here. To set the scene for the discussion, we have the Commission here, so DG CLIMA is responsible for an impact assessment, as most of you know, and we would like to give the opportunity to the DG CLIMA to explain to us what they are currently assessing, how they are approaching the topic, and not broadly the waste sector and waste to energy more specifically. So Mette, I'd like to come to you and ask you where the Commission currently stands. What are the main objectives of your work, and what are the key considerations that are emerging from this impact assessment? So, Mette, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me today to this event. Looking very much forward to the discussion here in the panel. I have prepared a short presentation on where we are with the ETS review and the waste incineration topic. So, if we go to the next slide. So I would just give a brief picture on where we stand right now. The main elements that are defining our European policy, or some of the main elements, are competitiveness, the concern for Europe's businesses, and staying the course for the climate goals. These have been clearly stated in the Draghi report and in the competitiveness compass that was adopted not so long ago. In the area of climate, we have also earlier in March this year have an agreement between the Parliament and the Council on the 2040 climate target that's set out in our climate law. So we now have a very clear trajectory of where we are going. We have our long-term goal, we have our 2030 target, we now have our 2040 target, and climate neutrality in 2050. So the long-term course is clear of where we need to go with European economy. And then to support that transition, we have a review upcoming of the ETS, and that will ensure that we align well with the 2040 climate target. And therefore, we will come with a proposal in July this year. So next slide. So very briefly on what is the EU ETS review about. It comes in July, and it's mainly about shaping the ETS for the period between 31 and 40 in order to drive very much industrial decarbonisation, competitiveness, but also finalize the energy transition that we are at very high speed at delivering. So these are the main elements for the ETS review. So we need to ensure, and the ETS instrument is a very good instrument for that, that we deliver the required emissions reductions on the road towards climate neutrality. But we also realize that we need a bit more time and we need more flexibility for industry in this transition. So this will also be looked at very carefully in the ETS review. And then we have the opportunity with this review to extend to new sectors, and here waste comes in. But also we see that carbon removals is a new technology that is starting and that is being tested at different places. There are pilots and they start operating. So there's also an opportunity to help scaling up removals, because in the long run we will need more removals in the economy in order to balance out the emissions that are impossible to get rid of. Most of the emissions are possible to get rid of by shifting from fossil fuel to electricity or to hydrogen, so to technologies that are renewable. But we also know that for certain sectors we cannot get rid of all the emissions. So we need removals and we need to support the scale up of the carbon removals. This is also an area where the waste sector has some potential, which I will come back to. And then we certainly need to incentivize more circularity in the economy, and I would very much like to thank both the honourable member of the European Parliament and also Ella for mentioning that we need to have a coherent approach in our policies, and we need to incentivize much more circularity across the entire economy. And the EU ETS would like to contribute to that and try to aim to contribute to that. So what is the process? Next slide, please. We had a stakeholder consultation last summer. We have published the answers from that stakeholder consultation. We have also had specific meetings, and we are going to have another big stakeholder meeting soon. This was also mentioned in the European Council last week. We have been preparing an impact assessment, so we have been thoroughly looking into what could be potential changes to the EU ETS and what would it mean. And then we are coming with the legislative proposal in July. And then from then on we have the co-legislators take over, the Council and the European Parliament, and that is expected to take probably a year and a half, so we will finalize by end of 27 or maybe early 28. So those are the expected times. So then next slide. Yes, exactly. So how does this concern the waste management sector? Ella went very detailed into this, so I don't need to repeat, but we have discussed under the previous revision of the ETS directive whether waste should be included. We ended up having a review clause that we should look into by 2028 whether municipal waste incineration could be included in the ETS, as well as other waste management processes, in particular landfill. So what we have been looking at in our impact assessment that's nearly ready now is we have been looking for what is the potential for cost-effective emission reductions in the waste sector, because if there aren't any, then it would not make sense to include it in the EU ETS. It's the same for the waste sector, like for all the other sectors in the EU ETS. We are looking at competitiveness aspects, and we are looking at what are the possible contributions that the waste sector inclusion in the EU ETS could contribute to circular economy and the waste hierarchy. We cannot look at the ETS in isolation. We need to look at the entire waste policy together, and the EU ETS can be one element of that potentially. Next slide. So why do we consider action? We consider action because we have strong climate and circular economy goals, and the EU ETS could potentially support that. All sectors of the economy need to decarbonize. It's clear we need to reach climate neutrality in 2050, as I said, and it concerns all the economic sectors that we have. We need actions at different levels to move up the waste hierarchy and also ensure that we achieve our circular economy goal. So they go hand in hand, climate and circular economy goals, to a very large extent. But what we have seen is that there's a trend that the emissions from waste incineration, they are significant and they are increasing. So we are not moving towards climate neutrality in this sector. So we need to ensure that we move towards a reduction of waste by reuse, recycling targets, and these targets are very important, and also there we see that they have a potentially to be missed. So we need to move this trend in a new direction, so we reduce the emissions gradually towards climate neutrality. We also look at European competitiveness, and here incentivizing circular economy investment is very important, and more sector innovation. These are two aspects that are very important for competitiveness, strong drivers for the competitiveness and for creating jobs and economic growth in Europe. And in addition, we will also be able to foster carbon removals and CO2 recycling. This is still both elements at a much early stage of development. And then we want to ensure that we have a level playing field. So Ella was also clearly showing that we have a competitive distortion between the sectors, within the incineration sector, and also between member states in this sector at the moment. So level playing field concerns is also a big concern that we're looking at. Next slide, please. Here's just one snapshot from the public consultation. You can see that more than half agreed or strongly agreed that we should include municipal waste incineration in the ETS. There were a smaller part that disagreed, and then there was also around 20% that didn't know or were neutral. So this is the picture. Next slide, please. Where are we right now in terms of climate policy and municipal waste incineration? It's covered mainly by national policies. It's part of the effort sharing regulation, where member states are responsible for ensuring reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and reaching their 2030 climate targets. So this means it's mainly national policies and national measures that member states put in place to ensure that the objectives are reached for 2030 target. And And a few member states have taken action of integrating carbon costs in their policies. There are 5 countries mentioned, so they have seen this as a good measure to help reduce emissions from the waste sector. As I mentioned, some emissions are already covered under the EU ETS. Co-incineration of municipal waste, for example, when it's used in a cement kiln or in a chemical plant, that's covered. Also, industrial waste incineration is covered already. And when you have municipal waste-to-energy installations in certain member states, Denmark, Sweden, and Lithuania, that's also covered. Looking at the emissions profile, that's the next slide, please. So with the revision in 2023, we started monitoring the emissions. So thank you for the reporting also on that. We have 1 year of data. Soon after the reporting of emissions data for 2025, we will have that. But at the moment, we only have 24. But it shows already, and also what we kind of expected, that we have more and more or less half fossil and biogenic shares of emissions from the waste sector. And also it shows it's a substantial sector. It is around 40 million tons per year, which is roughly equivalent to 2/3 of the aviation sector that we cover in the EU ETS. And if it was included, it would be the 7th biggest sector in the EU ETS. So it is a substantial sector. It's definitely an important sector. Next slide. Yeah, policy options. We have been looking at different policy options in our impact assessment. The first one is to not include more waste management processes that we already have. Here, if we keep that, it would be important that we improve the legal clarity on the current scope. It's a little bit mixed as it is, as I just mentioned. The second policy option we have been looking at is to include municipal waste incineration installations in the EU ETS. And the third option is to include all waste incineration installations and landfill of non-hazardous waste in the EU ETS. Soon you will be able to see the impact assessment when the legal proposal comes out. Then landfill diversion. That was an important element, and it was also mentioned already in the review clause in the directive. And here I very much share the concern also with the previous speakers that we must ensure that we don't incentivize landfill from including potentially waste in the EU ETS. So we have also been asking stakeholders what to do. The solutions that are being proposed are very different. So we have been looking at the different options to ensure that we have an appropriate, a feasible and effective mechanism to avoid landfill diversion. And this requires also close cooperation with the environmental policy and our colleagues in DG Environment. What we have seen in our assessment is that regulatory policy frameworks remain key. Whether we put the waste into the ETS or not, regulatory policies are really, really important for maintaining the right track for landfill reducing and less landfilling. So evidence has shown that there are no signs of landfill diversion, and we have had a sharp landfill decrease over time, so that's different to what we have seen for waste, where I was saying municipal waste, we see an increase in emissions. But where we combine strong landfill policy with carbon pricing, then there's no sign of having any landfill diversions. So it's important to combine carbon pricing with very robust landfill policies. Next slide. We have also looked into the supportive framework, which is also important. We know that for all sectors on the EU ETS can never stand alone. Supporting policies are needed for all sectors. So if we want a good carbon pricing, we do need complementary waste policies that are mutually enforcing each other. So we need to ensure we have very strong circular economy policies. And I think this is also something that colleagues are looking into. We need to have separate waste collection. We need to have pay-as-you-throw schemes. We need to have a market for secondary raw materials and recycling, pre- and post-sorting, and strong landfill regulation. So we very much support that we have a broad framework around waste that includes circular economy policies. Also, we need producer-oriented policies to share the responsibility upstream. We need to look at stronger EPR schemes, schemes like design for recycling requirements, lifetime extension, repairability, and so on. And we need to be able to roll these policies out to a much stronger effect to place more responsibility at the producers. And then we also need financial tools, and that was also needed. It doesn't come without finance. So we need to support abatement solutions, both for the operators, for long-term solutions, and also for local authorities for circular economy measures. In the EU ETS, we are very fortunate that it also generates revenues, and therefore we have European-level instruments like the Innovation Fund and future also an industrial decarbonisation fund that will help the industrial sectors that are covered by the EU ETS to decarbonise. And there's a lot of CCUS support there already and projects also for the waste sector. But also the rest of the revenues, and that's by far the most of the revenues from the ETS, they go directly to member states' budgets. And member states are required to spend all their revenues from the EU ETS for decarbonisation and energy policies. So there's a very big potential for member states also to support economic measures with the money from the ETS for local authorities to drive forward this process. So we do recognize that the EU ETS never stands alone, and it's not just for the waste sector, it's for every sector that's covered. We need a supportive framework, and we need to look at all the policies around and the financing instruments to make this whole thing work. The carbon price can give a very strong signal for the direction, but the other policies need to support. Next slide, please. That is just a slide that shows the potential for the circular economy. It's a new study from the Joint Research Centre that shows that we can reduce emissions from plastics by 75 to 85 million tons CO2 equivalent by 2050. So there are potential in circularity, reduce, reuse, and recover. And to conclude, I just want to give, next slide, an overview of the next steps. So I mentioned the ETS review. The proposal is coming in July. And if we do propose to include waste as one of the options, then we would see that it could earliest be included in 2030, as it takes time for the regulatory process to finalize. In addition, our colleagues in DG Environment are working on the Circular Economy Act. It's also coming out in Q3 this year. And here they are particularly looking at some of the elements that I was mentioning, such as the recycling market, landfill restrictions, waste production, EPR schemes, etc. And we also need strong methodologies for monitoring emissions. We have the Industrial Emissions Directive that are coming out with what they call the best available techniques. They are coming out in Q2 2027, and they aim to conclude this process in 2029. And they will include methane emissions monitoring from landfill. So this will give us future data on landfilling emission from methane that we don't have at the moment. this was my presentation. Thank you very much. I hope it was okay, and I'm very happy to participate in the debate.
Thank you.
I'll stay on this slide. Thank you very much, Mette, for this a very, very insightful presentation. We heard a lot of information that, well, we knew that it was coming. Now a lot of things have been confirmed. We have a new date, 2030, not anymore 2028. It's something. It's still, possible inclusion. We're not talking about anything else. Before I proceed and give the floor to the three other panelists, I'd like to take the opportunity, because it was an important presentation, and I'd like to ask you a couple of follow-up questions, because I'm sure people are also eager to learn more. The first one has to do with the slide that you showed about why consider action, and you discussed some trends. And there you noted that waste incineration emissions are significant and increasing, while reduction, reuse, and recycling targets remain at risk of being missed. But if we look at the system as a whole, the waste sector, waste to energy and recycling are complementary options. And this is also what earlier MEP Moratti said. Waste to energy treats the residual fraction that remains after reuse, after recycling, after prevention, of course, as well. At the same time, in many member states, increased waste to energy has gone hand in hand with landfill diversion and lower landfill rates. So we also saw that trend. So I'd like to ask you, how do you interpret this trend, and how do you ensure that emissions from waste to energy are assessed in the broader context of emissions avoided from landfill diversion?
Yes, thank you very much. You had a slide, or Ella had a slide from CEWEP on the different countries and how much recycling there is, how much waste to energy there is, how much landfill there is. And I think that one gives a very good overview of the situation in different countries and how you can interpret it. So one thing is that where you have a lot of landfill, you have a huge potential to avoid that, and you have a huge potential to increase your circularity by sorting better the waste and not put it in landfilling and reusing and recycle in the whole circular economy way. So there's a large potential there for some countries that is really, shall we say, very low-hanging fruits. You have other member states you mentioned where you have strong landfill policies together with also municipal waste-to-energy plants, and that is in Denmark and Sweden. And there you have managed to have these together, that you have reduced and almost eliminated landfill, and you have had a strong policy of using waste to energy as part of your energy policy. These countries had put the waste to energy plants into the ETS to ensure a level playing field between the different energy sources that they're using. But then you were saying, but why haven't they reduced their emissions from the waste there? And I think it's because you have this uneven situation within the EU. So it's also, of course, a business. And once you have established a waste-to-energy plant, you want to move it at full speed and at full power, of course, and what you can. So there are some incinerators that, of course, then attract waste from other places. And this is why you don't see reductions, but you see that those economic efficient plants that they are out there, they will, of course, be used to the full extent. So therefore, you cannot look at a single plant. You need to look in a systemic approach across the whole of the EU and see whether we have the sufficient number of waste to energy installations and how the transition is going to go overall. You cannot look at a single one and how that is operating in particular.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mette, for the very analytical response. I'm sure the other panelists will also want to comment on that and about the different perspectives in different member states. We do have 3 different member states represented here from the 3 operators. I'm coming to the second question, which is basically on the slide about landfill diversion. And you also said this now. You draw again from the experience of Denmark and Sweden, and you said that in those countries we did see a lot of landfill diversion because there was infrastructure as well in place. But in this specific slide, I'm sorry if it sounds a little bit interrogating, but as you understand, personally and on behalf of the 2 associations here, we are very eager to understand more about this process. It's huge for the sector. But on that slide, you mentioned that there is no sign of landfill diversion where carbon pricing, so specifically, for municipal waste incineration is combined with robust landfill policies. Could there be maybe a risk of drawing the wrong policy lessons from these examples? And I'm going to explain why. Basically, I did already, but it's not only Denmark and Sweden, it's also the case of Germany, that they have seen these countries very strong landfill diversion, and because of waste energy infrastructure, because of regulatory schemes, because of high recycling performance as well. So all of this together works to bring down landfill rates. So I'm just wondering if you would elaborate, on the difference between what you just said and the slide on carbon pricing. And it would also be interesting to see later from the audience, because we also have representatives from competent authorities from member states, if they can also bring the experience and see what actually happened in the implementation at the national level.
Sorry, I didn't understand. Was there a question?
So the thing is, when you were presenting on the slide, you draw a correlation between carbon pricing for waste to energy and no landfill diversion, no diversion to landfills.
Yes.
So because there is a system in place, an ETS system in place, that's why there was no diversion to landfills. While later, while you were responding to my previous question, you answered that in those member states, that Sweden and Denmark, we saw landfill rates that were lower because there was also infrastructure and also higher recycling, and a lot of other policies came into place. So I'm just wondering, what is exactly the role of carbon pricing in this system that you described before?
Okay, thank you. Then sorry, I didn't understand in the first place. So I was saying that ETS and landfill policies, strong policies, go hand in hand. When you have good landfill policies and you have carbon pricing, then you have not seen any diversion from municipal waste incineration or from waste incineration into landfill. So you need strong policies on landfills as well as carbon pricing. And we have European policies, and we have to ensure that they are well implemented as well and continues to be well implemented. So that was the one side. And the other side, so the ETS has the possibility to provide the incentive to moving the waste higher up the waste hierarchy. So putting a price on waste means that there's an incentive to more recycling, to produce less waste, and to reuse and the whole circular economy. And this is important, and there was the JRC study that shows that there's a huge potential in Europe for moving to more circularity, and the price signal will help on that. So this was my point.
Thank you, Mette. And now we can move to the roundtable discussion. I took a lot of the time on this, but apologies in advance. I would like to invite each of the other panelists to take the floor one by one and offer their perspectives. I will give you approximately 6 to 7 minutes to do also your interventions, to recuperate a little bit for the time. And and we will start with Donatas, with basically the experience from Lithuania. Lithuania has been covering their waste energy sector sector in the ETS since 2016, so they bring 10 years of experience. And Donatas, what we would like to hear from you today is what was the real impact of the ETS inclusion on plant operations and the broader waste management system. And if you can also share details about what Ella asked in the beginning in her introduction. Did you see any correlation between the ETS on waste to energy and recycling, higher recycling rates? The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So let's run through the time lapse of Lithuania development. Let's take 2010 as a reference year, because there was no incineration capacities. 94% of the waste was going to the landfill, 6% was recycled. Yeah, let's fix that. We started development of the capacities in 2013, so first waste-to-energy plant began the operation, and this plant in 2016 was included in EU ETS. So numbers in 2016, in the inclusion moment, landfilling 31% from 94, recycling 50%. Yeah, the last statistic from Eurostat, sorry, but it's 2023, and the numbers are 8% of landfilling, 49% of recycling, just due to the free waste-to-energy plants within the country. So the increment of the energy recovery, but not the landfilling. So the recycling stayed at the same level without any changes. So going further, we are lucky to our location of our state. We are in well-developed district heating network, so the main three revenue streams are gate fees, electricity sales, and heat sales. So to take into account the EU ETS impact in 2025, last year, it consists more than 70% of variable costs of the plant, you can imagine. So the heat helps us to manage somehow such huge costs, and we are lucky there. And in practice, in reality, any recycling company will have a residues. No any recyclers are acting without residues, with 100% recycling. So the residues, non-recyclable part, is going to a waste to energy. As we are in EU ETS, we are reallocating the costs of EU waste to the recyclers through the unrecyclable part, unrecyclable residues. And rising the price, and due to the volatility of the price on EU ETS, we do not have a long-term contracts because it's a highly unpredictable price forecast for that. And we started to blacklist some type of unrecyclable waste. So we've got rid of car fluff, no anymore. Some non-recoverable, non-recyclable plastic streams, because it generates a huge cost, and if we will calculate the fossil CO2 emission from the plastics, the gate fee would be so high that it will impact the recycling rates, and the recycling will decrease at that moment. So we're just blacklisting that. That's the truth from 10 years of experience in EU ETS. So, in opinion of our 3 plants in Lithuania and overall view to the waste management stream, the EU ETS should be revised quite drastically, because otherwise it has no direct correlation with the lowering down the landfill rate. It's done only by the waste to energy, and it has at the same time quite high impact to the growth of recycling.
Thank you, Donatas. So you covered quite a lot: recycling, blacklisting, the costs, the relevance of the costs. I suppose some of those topics are also relevant for the other speakers, so we'll go through all of you. I'm turning to you, Amalia, from the municipal waste management perspective, and from a country like Spain where landfill rates are a big issue. How do you see the ETS as a tool to support landfill diversion, move towards climate neutrality as well, as Mette mentioned as a key target, a key objective? And what safeguards are you asking for if the sector is covered by any type of climate policy in this case that might undermine the waste hierarchy?
Well, thanks for the invitation, and I think it's good to share views because I'm here to bring the view from Spain. And I would say that to understand the view first, we have to understand the context. And as you pointed, and as Ella's already shown in the graphs, in Spain we are dealing with a big issue, which is high landfill rates. We are around 50% of landfilling of municipal waste still there. And this means that every year we are sending 11 million tons, because we put percentage, but when you go in ciphers, this is even more clear, 11 million tons of municipal waste every year in the landfill. And we arrived to a big paradox, because we are tackling the CO2 issue that for us is really marginal, in this case from waste to energy, when we have to deal with a much bigger issue. We are the leaderships in Europe of the tons of municipal waste sent to landfill, which is 20% of the total amount. And we contribute in Spain in the emissions of greenhouse gas emissions, CO2 equivalents of 0.4%, as much. This means that we are putting together apples with pears in our case. We have another issue to handle, which is far away from the issue of the CO2, which is how we can go up in the hierarchy for the circular economy, to improve our situation and to grow in infrastructure that we really need to go out from this situation. So this is what I wanted to say here. No? First, that if we look to countries which have really gone the way already, and according to the graphs, the ones which have reached more than 50% recycling, and they have go below 5% of landfilling of municipal waste, they are also relying in waste to energy. And we are exactly stuck in the opposite, in the contrary situation. We have 11% of waste to energy at the moment. We have more than 50% of landfilling, depending how you calculate the numbers, and we have to deal with that. So I would say let's copy what the others have done. And in this point, I say that the ones which are already in this situation, they will not go directly for the ETS. They went another way, which was to tackle landfills, to build and put in place infrastructure, to put political issues in place that go this way. And then after that, they have already reached the low values on landfilling. They went in another model, which is not fitting to us nowadays. Just the opposite, because this is going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of money in the sector. Why? Because we cannot avoid what is coming to waste to energy. We are a municipal service, essential service. We have to handle the waste rates, and we do our best with this waste which is not recycled. This is recover energy, recover materials, and to contribute to a service for the citizens. And we need to go further than that. We need to bring more infrastructure, not just of waste to energy. We need more recycling infrastructure. We need to make for a balance, for a combination. But we also need, we have calculated at least to double waste to energy for municipal waste capacity. And this needs investments. This needs money to come. And ETS is going to drain money for us because we are going to pay for something without the decarbonization objectives we are looking for. If we forgot that what we have to do is go against the landfill. Landfill is contributing, I don't know if we are in the 7th position in Europe, but I tell you that in Spain, landfill is contributing 75% of the emission of just the waste sector, while waste to energy is contributing 5%. So this is really, really not comparable. And I think it's like putting a CO2 tax in this moment in the end of pipe, because at the end we receive what we receive there, and it's going to drain the money we need for these investments. And this goes also together with also taxonomy. We need that this is to build and to invest in infrastructure to go out from landfill is considered sustainable investment, and this will help us. This is the winning stair we have to build in the case of Spain to go out from the situation we have. So first go for the landfill, and then they can go other policies for other sectors. So this is our view. I don't know, it has been clear, but we have made a study, numbers, calculation of how much it's going to cost. We also see very far away the way of the decarbonization of the sector in Spain, in the municipal ways, because we don't have CO2 capture infrastructure, neither networks, and it's going to be even cheaper to pay for the cost of the ETS than to invest in decarbonization. So this, at the end, has to have an objective to go there, and we don't see that. We think at the moment this is not focused in the particular context and situation of Spain.
Thank you very much, Amalia. I turn to you now, Paul. You bring a different experience because Indaver covers many parts of the waste management chain. And I'd like to ask you, what do you believe, if you believe that the carbon price signal will be an effective instrument to drive decarbonization in the waste sector broadly and the waste-to-energy sector more specifically? And if you see any effects generally on the whole waste management chain, maybe if you can share something with us. Thank you.
So thanks to be invited as chairman of the board of directors of Indaver. I'm going to speak from that position and not from my position as president of CEWEP. Tomorrow we are going to further discuss it, and then I will become, again, president of CEWEP. Here I'm the chairman of the board of directors of Indaver. Indaver, just to position ourselves as an integrated waste management company based in Belgium, but active in the whole of Europe, we are operating indeed a broad range of treatment facilities, from the modern ones, let's say, plastics to chemicals, hydrochloric acid recycling units, critical raw material recycling units, HAZ waste treatment, waste to energy, and still some landfills. In total, we handle more than 5.6 million tons of waste. And that broad portfolio and our European network give us the possibility to offer customers always the best solution of what we see as the best solution for their waste streams. And we have developed a methodology for that. We call that the sustainability triangle. And that's, we always look to the balance of the best environmental option, no long-term liabilities, and an affordable cost, because also cost is still important. Now, if we stick to the goal that we want to become reduce our carbon emissions by 90% in 2040 and become carbon neutral in 2050, we have something to do. And a decent system of carbon pricing combined with tradable rights, in which fossil CO2 and biogenic CO2 have the same value, can be an effective instrument to realize net zero in the waste sector. I'm convinced of that. However, the present ETS system is not appropriate to fulfill this role, and if we do it, it will just end up, if we do it under the present conditions, it will just end up in higher costs for consumers and taxpayers, and without any impact on the CO2 emissions in the waste sector. It even can, And I'm convinced that we can further debate on that later on. I'm even convinced that it could have a negative impact on the level of sustainability of the waste sector in Europe. And I explain myself. So bringing waste to energy under the ETS1, as it is today, will increase the cost of treating non-recyclable waste. What will be the impact? It was already mentioned. It will make the price gap between landfilling and recovery bigger as of today. So landfill diversion will become more difficult, and even, and that's more, and that will have an impact, especially if you look to European-wide. Waste producers will financially encourage to choose for a lower environmental option. That's certainly something what we should avoid. Making waste-to-energy more expensive, of waste management more expensive, leads also to more littering, with the adverse impact on the environment. But for me, the most important impact will also be on the speed that we are going to realize the circular economy. And I'm also the president of Circular Flanders. That's the transition platform of our industry in Flanders to a more circular approach. And in moving to the circularity, it's a lot about new business models, better products, better services, but also, what is also very important is the development of a high-quality recycling sector. And a high-quality recycling sector, do not underestimate, and that is what we see every day, a high-quality recycling sector, where you're going to produce products that are as good as the virgin materials, easily ends up with 30% rejects and residues. So, if you bring waste-to-energy under ETS, it will also become more expensive for the recycling industry, and it can jeopardize the further development of it. Now, some of those negative aspects can be mitigated by strong policy instruments, as, for me, a European-wide landfill ban for recoverable waste. Not just rely on local member state policy, because I'm 42 years in business now, and I think I was one of the first lobbyists in Europe. At that moment, you still could knock on the door, and you didn't have to register at that moment. But you see what still happens in Europe, and we were in 1999 with the Commission and with the Cohesion Fund in Greece to help them invest in waste to energy, but it was not realized due to the fact that it would hamper recycling. Today they do still not recycle, rely on landfill, and have no waste to energy. That's one. And second, we also have to avoid, we need to have an export ban for residual waste and mixed waste streams, because we really have to avoid leakage. So it's clear to me, if we bring waste to energy in 2030 under ETS, and without those mitigating measures, it will have a negative impact on the sector. Now, looking a little bit further ahead. We as Indever would be pleased to become carbon neutral and are ready to invest in it. As our sector is hard to decarbonize, the only possibility at the end is a CCSU. Otherwise, it will not work. We have made, with CEWEP, we have made a study. If we are going to realize all our goals in the EU, we never did before, but if we are going to realize them all, we still need in the EU 120 million tons of residual waste capacity. Now, today, it's clear that the technology exists to move to CCSU, but the business plan is not flying. And ETS1 will not help in order to realize our business plan. It will take some money away that we otherwise could invest in better technologies. And I know what you're going to say, because you can get it back by subsidies. But I ask myself if that is the best way. And on the other hand, in order to have a business plan that flies, the ETS price has to go up to 250 to 300 euro per ton. That will not happen in the midterm. I was also took part in the industrial top in Antwerp, where we were discussing that. Our industry in Europe can't bear that at this moment. So that will not happen. So to finalize, the waste sector, I'm also optimistic. The waste sector can become circular and carbon neutral with a decent carbon pricing system combined with the necessary measures to avoid leakage. However, ladies and gentlemen, and that's also the elephant in the room, it will come with a cost that will be on the back of the consumer and the taxpayer, and at the end the other side. We made the calculation for ourselves. A carbon neutral waste sector in the EU will depend finally at the end on CCS, what will result in a yearly cost to bear by consumers and taxpayers of roughly 20 billion euro a year. So policymakers simply have to decide on that, if it is worth to pay that price, and also to explain to the population that this will have a negative impact on the buying power of the people. For me, no problem. If you decide, we will invest.
Thank you very much, Paul. So we heard a lot from all three operators. I'm going to start one by one, trying to categorize the topics. One is about costs. You all three mentioned that this will come with a huge cost. In Lithuania, it has already come. And it will be translated into more cost for the society, be it municipalities, be it citizens, maybe also higher up in the hierarchy. It might impact also the recycling facilities that need to get rid of their rejected waste. Mette, I would like to ask for your comment on this. How does the Commission assess these social and economic impacts that will come with these costs? You can share something with us.
Yes, thank you. It will cost, and there's a very big difference from short term and long term. And I started by saying we need to prepare for the long term, and we need to see what we can do in the short term. And so I want to say, indeed, CCUS is the solution for what is left of emissions that are unabatable when we go long term. And we do a lot to support CCUS, which is expensive, but prices will also, to some extent, go down with better innovation, but it's not for tomorrow, it's medium to long term. In the short term, the options are really around better circularity. And I have a number of studies, but we maybe come back to that. Now it's first about costs. So the costs are not about CCUS tomorrow. The cost is about... what will it bring? First of all, there's a huge potential also, indeed, to move some of the waste to recycling. But there is what we call also the residual unrecyclable waste that we need to still treat. We have some studies to show that if you put a carbon price on waste, it is an essential part to incentivize and reduce the waste. And the impact on the household is also expected to be manageable. There's evidence from those countries that already apply the carbon price. So there's evidence, for example, from Germany, from Norway and Sweden. And they show that the increase in average annual household waste management fee is limited to 4 to 8%. And you may say that's also cost, yes. But then if you then take on top that a substantial share, a recent study that has been done by Suez in the UK, it's from 2025, that 37 to 56% of this waste can be avoided through improved waste prevention, separation and reduction. So You have as a starting point these 4 to 8% increased costs for households, but there's a possibility to halve them. So yes, there will be a price, but we believe the impact of the household is expected to be manageable. And therefore, another thing is it's very important also to support the local authorities in helping this process to move forward. And there is also where the revenues from the ETS can come in. They can help come in and provide financial support to the municipal to the municipal authorities in order to help getting better measures for improve the whole circular economy in their communes. So this also provides business opportunities and employment creation in the recycling and reuse and the whole circular economy sector. So we have to look at it overall, and indeed we recognize that there is costs, and that is okay, but we also see them as manageable.
Thank you, Mette. You mentioned just now that you support carbon capture. As the Commission in general, you support CCUS. For the waste energy sector, how does this exactly materialize when waste energy itself is not recognized in the taxonomy, it's not taxonomy aligned? And when we look at carbon capture for waste to energy, it's also still ambiguous how it's covered under the taxonomy, because we need also financial support from that part, from investments. What's your take on that?
Yes, indeed. The EU supports generally the need for carbon capture, use and storage. When we need to go to carbon neutrality, there's no other way than to use some of the CO2. And we do all sorts of innovations at the moment for putting them into products and also to recycle them, but also to store them under the ground. So there will be unavoidable emissions in many industrial sectors that we need CCUS for. We see that waste incineration has the potential here in the medium to long term. There are already several CCUS projects that are operational or under development in the waste incineration sector. Most of them are in those countries that also apply carbon pricing. So there are already operational projects in Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and the Netherlands. So it's definitely feasible. It also costs a lot of money. And that's where I say that indeed there's Innovation Fund and the Modernization Fund that can support the investments. So we do need a sufficient transition period and also an investment support mechanism to ensure that planning and investment is done in a very predictable manner. And this is why it's also important to have clarity on what is the long-term policy. But what the waste has that some of the other hard-to-abate sectors don't have is that half of the emissions are biogenic from the waste sector, and it means the waste sector has the potential to produce removals, and removals will be sellable in the European economy, and they will be very sought after. So there's a better business case for CCUS in the waste sector than there is in, shall we say, steel or so many of the other ETS sectors, because you can actually get a revenue out of that investment. Our assessment is that there's a positive business case for CCUS in the waste incineration already around the mid-30s. So it's one of the earliest sectors that will have the business case for CCUS. We are expecting, the technological development is expecting that as the technology matures and become more widely adopted, that there will also be some costs that go down. So at the Commission, we are developing an EU framework for CCUS infrastructure, which is also very important, and we haven't even talked about that yet, but you need both the CCUS fitted on the waste incinerator, and of course also that the infrastructure in place. And I think there's a strong policy in the Commission that we need to support this rollout timely.
Thank you, Mette. My comment, just as a moderator, yes, the CUS, maybe it can be a business case. Also, we represent suppliers here. We look at that, of course, but not all plants will be able to have carbon capture integrated. That's something that we always need to keep in mind. And I need to come to one more point, because before we move to the audience, you mentioned before, Paul, Amalia, in your interventions and your presentations, that there is a price gap with landfills, and this price gap will increase when the sector will be included in the ETS. Of course, if no other measures are taken, and landfill diversion will become much more difficult. Now, I heard your comments very clearly. I want to pass again to Mette. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, Mette. It's not an interrogation. It's just we're really happy that we have you here, and we can have some clarity on topics that have been tormenting us for the past many years. You emphasize that carbon pricing and circular economy policies need to be mutually reinforcing. That was very clear on your slides, and thank you for raising that point. Now, how are you collaborating with DG Environment, which is also going to participate in the second panel on this? How are you working together to ensure that these climate policies and climate and environmental objectives go hand in hand, especially when they work in the Circular Economy Act, in the IED, the Industrial Emissions Directive, and the BATs?
Yes, thank you. I think I didn't fully answer the previous question, because you were also mentioning the small waste incinerators where CCUS, I think the good news is, and you probably know it, but then I'm going to say that small modular units of CCUS are under development, and they will address the practical constraints of retrofitting smaller existing plants. So there is also solutions for the smaller plants. That's one element. I think we will also see that there's a need for consolidation in the sector. There are some of the smaller and older incineration plants that will have to stop at a certain point, that won't be fit for the future. So we will also meet some consolidation. But now coming to circular economy, we work very closely together with our neighbors. We are in the same building, so we have no excuse for not talking with each other. And DG Environment and in CLIMA, indeed, we are at the moment developing in parallel the ETS review, the Circular Economy Act revision. So there is ample of opportunity to discuss and ensure that the measures go hand in hand under the two policies.
Thank you very much, Mette. Thank you all for the first part of the panel. We still have a lot of time, but we promised a very long Q&A. I'm coming to you in 1 minute. We have a Slido before we turn to all of you for your direct questions. Let me go to that. Yes, here we go. Is it active? Yes. So you can scan the QR code. The question is, and you heard already some of the responses from the panelists, will the inclusion of waste-to-energy plants in the EU ETS increase recycling and separate collection rates? So you have 4 options. No, on the opposite, this could affect negatively recycling. No, there is no direct correlation. Yes, with a slight steering effect. Yes, it can be a tool to boost recycling and separate collection. So let's see what you will decide, or what you're thinking of. Okay. Still some people voting. I think we have quite a clear winner here. No, on the opposite, this could penalize recycling. Okay, interesting. Any comments from the panelists before we turn to the audience on the results that we see? Anything new?
Yeah, probably about the cost of this. I strongly believe that at a certain moment the elasticity of the price is very low. And what we have seen is, and I come from Belgium, where we all have no landfill anymore, high recycling rates, and also the rest is going for waste to energy. what we have seen is that you see a decrease in the production of municipal solid waste, but you see an increase in the production of commercial and recycling residues. And at the end, that compensates more or less for each other. And what you also see is that the second part is mostly paid by the EPR systems. So, but anyway, at the end, it's paid by the consumer. That's why.
Thank you, Paul. Okay. I think we can now turn to the audience. Yes, I see a very eager raised hand. So we have 2 microphones. I'll be asking you to raise your hands a bit in advance so we can be able to travel through the room and give you the floor. Yes, first one goes there. Yes, because you were closer. I'm sorry. It will come to you. It will come to the gentleman in the back. Yes, with the raised hand, as well as a follow-up question. If the second microphone can already travel to... you have it, Maxim. Sorry. I'm sorry. It's a big room, very crowded.
It's okay.
It's great. Yes.
It's okay? Oh, okay. My name is Jakub Bator. I'm here on behalf of the Polish Waste to Energy Association. And let me start maybe with obvious statement, but I believe it's needed. We are talking here about the EU regulation, and we have 27 countries in the EU now. I'm saying this because you mentioned on your slide that we have to find the so-called level playing field. So my question is, we have now 2 countries in ETS within 27. Wasn't it be more reasonable and more also democratic, I would say, to invite those 2 countries to add to 25 others? Then vice versa. So this is my first remark. And also, I believe we have now about 23% of waste still landfilling. This is the second remark. Also, across the EU, I'm not talking about Poland or Spain or any other countries. And you also showed that this impact on landfilling is low. ETS does not have impact on landfilling, what was interesting. But what we can learn from those countries, I mean Denmark or Sweden or others, the sequence of political decisions. So what I also believe is worth to think about is to try and find common regulation across the EU to lower the landfilling. We have now landfilling targets till 2040. If I'm not mistaken. So maybe in the first step, we could work together to, speed up these targets, when it goes for landfilling. Then, I'm saying this because this decision or even regulation which are we talking about, they do have impact on the investment decisions. So now, in many European countries, the best business is landfilling. It's not recycling. It's not chemical recycling. It's landfilling. The only reason why we don't see a huge landfilling investment in Poland is that the people are very strong against this. Yeah, let's say the social, but economically, within European regulation, the best business is landfilling. This is the brutal truth. So, I believe we should make some other steps to meet many other targets first, and then talk about ETS, because like someone told here, ETS is a very strong tool. And we are using this very strong tool to reduce, like Amalia said, Poland is the same. We are responsible about 0.3 CO2 emission comes from waste to energy sector. So I could talk long, but we have other questions. But those, let's to keep it short, 25 countries, vice versa, 2 countries, and maybe the sequence of the policy decision makers, like in Denmark or Sweden, wouldn't be wise to do this the same on the European level.
To Patrick, and then 3 rows behind We have another speaker, another question. Yes. Oh.
Okay, it was you. Yeah, my name is Unico van Koten from the Netherlands, Dutch Waste Management Association. In many ways, Ms. Quinn, you are representing a modern, contemporary, international tax collector, right? And the responsibility to over a potential additional jar of 4 billion euros is huge, certainly in times of economic hardship, which is even felt now in my country, the Netherlands, with 500,000 people under the poverty line. So my question is about the impact assessment. So in your reasoning, I detected a little bit a tendency to say, waste to energy is already in EU ETS. And I want to make sure that you are really doing a sturdy impact assessment to take into account the different realities in Europe, and also taking into account the basic conditions for carbon reduction to be met. And it is, of course, it is an interplay between DG Environment and CLIMA, but it's not only your dialogue. You have to dialogue much better with the waste sector and also with member states who do have a lot of experience on this matter. And then beautiful things can happen. So my question to you is about this impact assessment. Is this going to be really, because I know Ricardo did it for the UK, I'm not so, the quality of it is not so high, I must say, you know. And we just in the Netherlands had to face a 5, 6, 7 million euros tax burden on our sector. And we did an impact assessment by PricewaterhouseCoopers Strategies for 250,000 euros. And it really shows all the interconnections. And I mean, I'm expecting this, if you are going to collect 4 billion euros, and from citizens and companies, I expect really a very, very good impact assessment, bringing also on the table for everybody to read, for the policymakers to investigate in, to dialogue further on. What are the basis conditions which have to be met to ensure that we move on circular economy objectives, to move on landfill reduction in Europe, and do what we can in times of economic hardship on actual CO2 reduction, because I really do not want that this European institution is losing credibility at the level of citizens. I really want to deliver, and that must be done on the basis of a very important impact assessment. So your answer to that, please.
Thank you, Nico. Mette, is it okay if we take these two as a starting point, or shall we gather more?
No, it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. I can start. I agree with a lot of what's being said with Europe, with both of you. We need to make sensible policies. We need to make sure that they are really good policies and they are well analysed. I can, of course, not agree more. And we need to take citizens on board. I think we haven't decided yet. It's going to be a European Commission proposal, and we haven't decided yet either whether it's going to be waste in or out. But we have an indication that was shown from Ella that the European Council in 2022 voted, so that means that a majority of member states voted for including waste into carbon pricing by 2031. And we had also in the co-decision last time, so this was both the Council and the European Parliament that agreed on having a review to include already from 2028. So there is some guidance on this, on what member states overall and the European Parliament overall wants. I mean, we're going to go to a new co-decision, but that is some indication. But you are right, we need also to have the European citizen in on our policy, so we do owe them that we do proper analysis, and I try also to put that through here, that has been our aim over the past months and still is, to look into what there is of potential policies. You were saying that we need to take different realities in Europe into account, and I totally agree. So I would say we have potentially some front runners, you can say, that can show a little bit how it can be done. And then you have other countries where you were saying we still have a very big problem with landfill in Spain and something needs to be done. And I totally agree. And we don't say that that this is not a problem. But I have one example, and this is from Parma in Italy. So here they have put a higher price signal on residual waste. And that has really driven reduction in residual waste and increased separation and collection of recycling. So Parma is a city of 200,000 people, and they achieved a waste separation rate of over 80% and a 65% decrease in residual waste generation in only 3 years after they implemented a targeted pay-as-you-throw scheme. I think that is a wonderful example. And that's a wonderful example that also have similar cases in Belgium and in Germany and in other countries. So these examples exist. I don't say that they can be replicated everywhere. Maybe they cannot. But there are certainly some very good examples out there of what can be done. You were talking more about the landfill, and I would fully agree with you. We need strong landfill policies because, unfortunately, it's the cheapest just to dump in a landfill and do nothing. And that is the business case, and we need our politicians to help us with that because the business case is that it's the cheapest, but do we really want our countries to be filled up with a dump of waste? I don't, and I think most of us don't. So, yes, we need very strong landfill policies, and we need to ensure, and this is member states need to ensure that they are implemented. I don't say, I totally agree, we need that. And then I also would like to add that we cannot wait to get one right 100% before we move into the next. We don't have time for that. We have global warming, and we all see that. So we need to move in all sectors towards climate neutrality. So what we can see is that even though landfill is such a good business case, luckily there have been policies in place, at least in some member states, so they have steadily decreased by 45% since 1990. So we have had a steady decrease in what is landfilled, whereas the opposite is in the case for waste emissions. There we have had an increase, and it's 40 million tons. It's significant. It's a sector that would be the 7th biggest sector if it was in the ETS. So we are in there with the big ones, with just below chemicals and cement and steel, the very big sectors. Waste is not so far below as a sector. It's a significant sector. So we need to look at all the sectors. We need to have strong landfill policies in place, but we also need to take a very strong responsibility for the emissions coming from the waste sector.
Thank you, Mette. Yes, so Paul wants a comment.
Yeah,
Yes.
Just one comment, because do not underestimate the impact of the being landfilling available in Spain, in some of the eastern countries. What we see is in our business that some of our recycling units with 30% of rejects are not competitive anymore in Belgium or in the Netherlands or in Germany, and that we don't move at the moment, but that the waste is sent to those countries where it still can be landfilled. And that is what we see at the moment. And that's something where, and that's for me a really very strong signal, that if we implement ETS, it has to go hand in hand with that landfill ban.
Thank you, Paul. Patrick, yes, please.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your explanations. And I'm Patrick Clarence. I'm Secretary General of ESWET. I've got a question. First of all, I'm very happy that we have another co-decision, Because since 2020, geopolitics changed. There was no blackmail on critical raw material. Electricity prices, energy prices, oil prices, gas prices were not as they are today. So I'm very happy we have a new co-decision. Let's see what's coming out this time. And I have a clarification question for you, Mette, and then a question for Amalia. The clarification question is, the pie chart you showed, which showed that the majority of the respondents were in favor of including waste to energy in DTS. Does the weight of a sector representative like CEWEP and the average EU citizen, which is in contact with the garbage when they bring out the bag, have the same in this response? Or is it weighted somewhere that the sector representatives or the ones having it? That's just a clarification. And then a question to you. Amalia, you said 75% of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from landfill in Spain, 5% from waste to energy. If you would now significantly increase the emissions from waste to energy, would this significantly decrease the emissions from landfills? And would then overall emissions of the waste treatment sector significantly decrease or not? Thank you.
Yes, I think for this one, I'm going to allow directly to be answered. I like it. Yes, Amalia, you can start maybe. Yes.
Okay, so I'll go first. Well, I would say that we know the behavior of landfills, and landfills have the issue that the waste you put in one moment, that it goes for a very long time. So even whatever we do, there are two things to consider. The ton you have put in the landfill is there, and it's going to emit for a very long period. Another issue is that it's also a lot of resources which are lost. So this is because we have to have the broad, not just to focus on one issue, but we are losing resources, energy, local energy, affordable energy, renewable energy, and also metals, and also minerals, many things which we can put all together. But also the impact we know from methane is much more bigger. It's more than 2 times bigger than the impact of the CO2, which is what goes through our chimneys. And also if we go, for this reason that we recover energy and we recover material, we go with the whole perspective, it's more than 3.5 more. So even if we grow in the waste to energy, what we will get, the figure we will get, is not going to change so spectacular. Unfortunately, we have already this past, which we have to live with it. But we have this waste which has gone to the landfill. Every year it goes, it's more. So it's something which goes for the future. But we have to take decisions now. And I wanted to put an example. I come here representing the sector, Versu, which is the Association of Waste to Energy Plant, but I work in a plant specifically, not a waste to energy plant. I work in a complex, in a system which handles recycling, composting, anaerobic digestion, treatment of bottom ash. We have all together there for municipal waste. And we had the amounts of CO2 which were equivalent, CO2 which were emitted in the 1990s, when nothing was there except for landfilling on the island. And through the master plans, we built waste-to-energy capacity. We were growing on recycling, composting, anaerobic digestion, method recycling. We have sorting plan for plastics. Altogether, we have arrived nowadays for a reduction of 64% from the 19, which is exactly the year, 1919. This is a reference year for the reductions of CO2 emissions. So we have reached that already, and this was essential, the starting up of the waste-to-energy plant on the island. And we have a very specific context, which we were an island. We have not a space, we have a lot of pressure from the tourists, we have a very sensitive land, and there this was the solution. The solution was a complementary solution, but we started with waste-to-energy. The first thing we needed to do was to close the landfills. It was urgent, and the decision was politically taken in account. There we put on a waste-to-energy plant, and then we start to put order on what we have there, which was a real mess. And then afterwards, they came plan by plan. We have reviewed the master plans for 4 or 5 times. They came with much more recycling. We are growing on recycling tremendously. You can look for the numbers there on the website. They are public for our administration. And this has been a process of years. But 30 years later, because this started in 1990 and the decision was taken, we have reduced 64% of our emissions. And this was through a complementary model and without any ETS. So this is possible, and I think it's a question of taking decisions and to really take in the conscience of the problem. In our case, which is our particular case of Spain, we have the situation that we have. I'm not proud of that, but I think we have really to build winner stairs, I say that, and to look to the best option, because we are not on time. So I think we have to really focus on which is a viable solution in each case.
Thank you, Amalia. Mette, do you want to comment on the second scale of Patrick's question?
Yeah, I can be quick. The public consultation, every answer counts the same. So it's just yeah. On the carbon price and the new co-decision, I agree. We are in a situation where we have a challenging geopolitical reality. We have high energy prices. If we come back to when we had the previous co-decision, we also had very high energy prices. We had them higher than we have them now, and we still did the decision that we did. We had just started the war in Ukraine in 2022, and that was really, I don't know if we remember, but we had a very high pressure on the EU ETS as well at that point. But in the end, in that case, the review was as it was also on the waste. And I think also the outcome of the European Council last week showed that overall there's a strong support for maintaining carbon pricing as a strong instrument to drive decarbonisation in the EU.
Thank you, Mette. We have a question, yes, and then the microphone, the second one. Yeah, great, thank you.
Thank you very much for this event. My name is Jean-Philippe Perrault. I am head of energy and climate regulation unit of the Solvay Group. Solvay company is a chemical company that operates energy-intensive processes subject to worldwide competition. We as Solvay recognize that landfilling is not the solution. It generates methane emission. But putting waste in landfill is like to store forever domestic energy sources. And in the context of war in the Middle East, using waste for generating energy will improve the security of supply and reduce energy dependency of Europe. However, the inclusion of waste incineration in EU ETS 1 will create additional CO2 costs for energy-intensive manufacturing industry. It is the reason why we have a proposal. We recommend to include waste incineration in EU ETS 1, but in the same times recognize zero CO2 emission factors for waste. It will be a solution to improve the switch from landfill to waste to energy. It will improve the competitiveness of European manufacturing industry, and it will also decrease the administrative burdens, because when we are obliged to report CO2 generated by the combustion of waste, you can transmit really a nightmare. And it is our proposal to include waste in ETS 1 with a zero CO2 emission factors.
Thank you. And let's go to the other question as well. And if there is one last question in the room, I'll take the lady. I'm sorry, we didn't hear from. So next there will be you. Yes.
Thank you. Micha Hesse, AB Amsterdam, working in a large waste-to-energy corporation that is looking for a solution to remove CO2 about 500,000 tons, over 33% of our total emission. And it takes quite a while because I've been working on this project since 2019. One of my first questions to you, Mrs. Quinn, is about your remark about negative emissions removal, that they are very much sought for. There's just one company that actually buys these removals, it's Microsoft. If you could help me looking for the companies or the institutions that want to buy these negative emissions, please help me. Then my second point will.
Competition with him.
This is your remark, and I'm specifically saying, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. The second point is then I might not use the negative emissions, but I want to sell my biogenic CO2 to a horticulture a greenhouse, or maybe I can make stuff of that. And then the next problem arises coming from the European Commission. And that is that I have to mass balance my fossil and my biogenic CO2 either by putting it in a pipeline or by putting it in a ship. And the problem is not seen in any impact assessment today. Please help us again by removing this ridiculous regulation and help us use the biogenic CO2 for the profit of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we are, in order to wrap up as well, the last question from the audience. Yes, please.
Hi, hi everyone. So I'm Victoria from Plastics Recyclers Europe. So I take the lens of the plastic recycling industry here, and I came here with the goal of realizing, like, having an answer to this precise question on the screen, which I feel like I didn't really get. My association hasn't looked into it particularly yet, because there's a lot of things to do. But yeah, so I'm wondering whether this exact question will be part of the impact assessment. So the inclusion of waste energy plants into the EU ETS, like the impact for the recycling industry. And also a point of concern to me when listening to the discussions was the cost of the EU ETS passing down potentially to recyclers, considering that recycling is part of the broader decarbonisation efforts of the EU, and that we have recycling targets in place for our circularity economy. So I'm wondering whether this is something that's going to specifically be addressed in the impact assessment and looked at due to its importance. But thank you very much for the discussions.
Thank you very much. And I think the questions were not only addressed to Mette, because they had elements that I think some of the other panelists also want to comment on. So maybe, Donatas, any comments on that? Also with what Solveig was proposing, maybe? Yes.
Yeah, just for the pass-through. So we are passing the costs for non-recyclable part from you as recycles, because polluter pays. It's simple. Mm-hmm. So it's maybe one of the positive sides from that you could think about increasing the recycling efficiency, and we at the same time will keep our CO2 emissions as stable as possible, because any rise up in the residues from recyclers directly impacts our CO2 fossil emissions. And now we're keeping 10 years quite a stable CO2 emission, just banning or increasing the gate fee for residues from the plastic recyclers.
Thank you, Donatas. Anyone else, any other comment before I give the floor to Mette to answer specifically to the Commission questions? No. Mette, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so first on of the experiment of where are you again? of putting or the proposal of including waste into the ETS1, but zero rate the emissions. I think it would be hard to get a support for that to fly because there are emissions from waste. I will totally agree with you that we need to have better security of energy supply, and waste to energy is a homegrown energy. So in the short term, I'm not saying that energy is not good, but I'm saying we need to tackle the emissions from that energy, both short and longer term. So the very best secure supply of energy is, of course, clean energy that has no emissions. So there we're talking about renewable energy and nuclear energy. So it would be very hard to argue to put waste in with a zero emission factor. To the gentleman from the Netherlands and your waste plant, and I think we will come with good news for you, particularly on the removals, because there's a big recognition that we need to support to build out the removals industry. So there will be, we have already said that we would integrate DAX and bio-CCS in the next ETS, so you will see there will be different ways of supporting that they can be sold at a price that is business. There's a business case for. So there will, the carbon price will help, but it will not provide the whole price differential, particularly in the beginning. So there will need to be different types of support. But secondly, we also see in the waste sector that when you reach the second part of the 30s, you're probably going to be able to do it without subsidies anymore. But in the beginning, we will certainly need subsidies. And then I fully understand your point on the biogenic fossil part, on when you are exporting your CO2. We are looking at it and we are considering whether it's something we need to come back to on that act. And then to Plastics Europe, yes, I think exactly that we are expecting to increase the circular economy elements. But as I also said, the EU ETS never stands alone. The EU ETS can operate both as a carrot and a stick, and it can put a price so to incentivize less, but it can also provide funding. And we also need to see this together with the environmental policies and see it as a whole. We need a whole framework of policies going across climate and energy policies.
Thank you very much, Mette. Yeah. And with this, I want to give the opportunity to all of you to give one final sentence, really quick. What key takeaway do you have from this panel and from the discussion of how effective ETS can be in driving decarbonization for the waste-to-energy sector? And what conditions, or maybe you want to answer on the conditions that we need to make this successful. So, Paul, I'll start with you.
That's clear. I think it was for me very clear. ETS, if you bring it, if you bring waste-to-energy under ETS, definitely we have to avoid carbon leakage. That's one. And yeah, that's for me the most important one. And stability at that moment. Stability of the legal framework. And be honest to the people, it will be at the detriment of the buying power of the people, because it will be an extra cost for the civils.
Thank you, Paul. Amalia?
Yeah, I would say it's important to have into account asymmetries we have in the member states and even in the state in between regions, and to be sure that it's not going to be a drainage that really goes for the objective, because if not, we are just going to lose resources to invest in the infrastructures we need to really close the gap between landfilling and the real circular economy.
Thank you, Mariam.
Yes, and I would like to come back to Mrs. Morati's very good speech. I think she had some really good points, and I would like to refer to that. She was saying that climate policy and circular economy are codependent, and I would so much agree on that. I would also very much agree that the only way forward in the long term is to continue the decarbonisation path, and we have to look and continue to discuss how we can do that. So we need to look at the transition pathways and how it will work so the policies can be effective, provide competitiveness and be efficient.
Thank you, Mette. And Donatas?
From my perspective, it should be revised quite drastically, as now as a tool it's not working and not making impact to decarbonization, just adding the cost including to the recyclers. So it could be the tool, but it should be adjusted totally and evaluated in the bigger scheme of total chain.
Thank you, Donatas. Please, yes. Thank you so much, all of you, and thank you to the audience for the engagement. And ETS inclusion might indeed happen. The question is, will it be successful, and what will that depend on? Which other policies? So thank you all very much for participating in this first panel. And now I invite you to take a 30-minute coffee break before Fabio Poretti of CEWEP will take you to the second panel. Thank you so much.